Good evening, everybody, and welcome and thank you for coming along tonight. We are live streaming this up on the camera here to people, and just for those in the audience, because they only see the people at the speakers here, we've got 10 people in the chambers. Thank you very much. If I can just go through a number of slides. So this evening will be speakers from myself talking about the Local Government Act. We've got the Electoral Commission talking about some of the issues associated with the enrolment components, and then Commissioner Jurovic is here to talk about the role as a councillor and his experience as a councillor. First of all, from an acknowledgement point of view of traditional owners, the town of Port Hedland would like to acknowledge the Kariyarra, Nala and Ngunnawal people as the traditional custodians of the town of Port Hedland lands. We recognise their strength and resilience and pay our respects to their elders past and present and emerging. We extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people of the local community and recognise their rich cultures and their continuing connection to the land and the waters. Just from a housekeeping point of view, again, appreciate your attendance and thank you for coming along this evening. Can you please just switch your mobile phones off or put them on silent if you haven't already done so? And toilets are located downstairs and to the left, both the male and female of the stairs. If you wanted to raise your hand for a question as we go or at the end of the presentation, please make yourself available by raising that hand so that the speaker can actually see you. Bins are located down by the entrance, and the emergency exits are marked and the muster points are in the main car park out to the front here. Please be respectful of others and their opinions. Thank you. So speaking tonight was myself talking about some of the Local Government Act provisions, and Andrew is the returning officer, and Andrew is here this evening, and also David Payne, who's the Deputy Returning Officer from the WA Electoral Commission, and also Commissioner Ron Jurovic, who's the Town of Port Hedland Commissioner. Just talking about the role of local government, I'll get into some of the slides that I'm presenting now and move ahead. The Mayor and 8 councillors are properly elected for a 4-year term, with a half council ordinary election held every 2 years. The March 2026 elections will see 1 mayor elected until October 29, 4 members elected until 2029, and 4 members elected until October 2027. The Deputy Mayor's position is elected by the councillors for a period of 2 years. Andrew, I think you'll be talking a little bit more about that in some of your slides. The role of the council, it under statute governs the local government's affairs. It's responsible for the performance of the local government functions, determines the service and facilities provided by the local government, determines the local government's policies, plans strategically for the future of the district, selects the CEO and reviews their performance, provides the CEO with strategic direction. The town's currently governed by Commissioner Shaw, who's the Chair, Commissioner Aldridge, Deputy Chair, and Commissioner Jurovic, AM, under the Local Government Act 1995. The role of the councillor, so as it's enshrined, represents the interest of electors, ratepayers and residents of the district, and takes account of the interests of other persons who work in or visit the district, participates in deliberation and decision-making of the local government at council and committee meetings, and facilitates communication with the community about council decisions. That's a really important point, and I'll talk about that shortly because the amendment provisions in 2024 saw that provision change to say with the facilitations around council decisions. Facilitates, maintains good working relationships with other councillors, the Mayor or President and the CEO. Acts consistently with the role of council, maintains and develops the requisite skills to effectively perform their role. The Local Government Amendment Act of 2024, there was legislative changes that have been made that have great potential to influence the culture of local government councils for the better, and the government has passed those. Section 210, subsection 1, an account of the interests of other persons who work in or visit the district and broadens a councillor's view of the district. So before it always talked about the people of the district, now it's really being quite specific that people who are working in the district or coming into the district. Also under 210(1)(c), council facilitates communication with the community about council decisions and it narrows the focus on the council communication, which has been a problem in local government that needs to be interpreted, and the state have made that change. Under section 210(1), the good working relationships with other councillors, the mayor or president and the CEO promotes development of positive working relationships. And 210(1)(f), maintain and develop requisite skills and provides for ongoing skill development. The role of the mayor. The mayor provides leadership and guidance to the council and the council members, including regarding roles and responsibilities, acts as the principal spokesperson for the local government, carries out civic and ceremonial duties, acting consistently with the council's decisions, presides at meetings of the council, ensuring that meetings are orderly and held in accordance with the Act, promotes, facilitates and supports positive and constructive working relationship among council members, and then liaises with the CEO and the local government's affairs and the performance of its functions. I think this diagram here really tries to reflect how that role, the administration being separate from the council, but the mayor and the chief executive officer working collectively on what the council's decisions are. Meetings and workshop attendance. So councillors may attend between 1 to 3 meetings every week. And this is really designed to try and give candidates an idea of what some of the workload is in that elected member's role. Council meetings start at 5:30. There's formal meetings where decisions are made. It's currently held on the last Wednesday of each month, but that's also determined by council, and the new council may choose to change that. Special meetings are held ad hoc for specific purposes, and council meetings are live streamed and open to the public to come in and talk about and ask questions. The Audit, Risk and Improvement Committee is governed under regulations, and there's 4 meetings per year for committee members. There's an annual general meeting of electors, and that's once every financial year to present the annual report and the audited financial statements in accordance with the Admin Reg 15. Other meetings, there's confidential briefings, there's workshops, briefings, agenda feedback sessions, budget workshops, consultation sessions, functions and ceremonies, and external committees. The council meetings, to talk about the types of meetings that Port Hedland has, there's an ordinary council meeting that's held once a month, and the reading volume for that is around 200 to 600 pages. And normally we try to ensure that there's at least 5 clear days provided for the councillors to read that. There's confidential briefings that are held monthly. Again, it might be between 50 to 100 pages of briefings. And there's agenda feedback session, which is initial review of the OCM for the councillors. And that's monthly, and again, it's the same agenda as the councillors see for the OCM and the community see. There's an Audit, Risk and Improvement Committee meeting, and that meets quarterly, and that's usually between 30 to 70 or so odd pages. That again deals with a whole series of issues in relation to the finances, the operations and the risk associated with the council. There's also workshops and briefings depending on what the strategic issues that may come up, and again 30 to 100 pages. And the documents are provided, as I said earlier, 5 clear working days. Newly elected councillors are required under the Local Government Act to complete 5 units of training, the Council Member Essentials course, within their 12 months of appointment. The units include those 5 pieces there, which is understanding local government, serving on council, meeting procedures, conflicts of interest, understanding financial reports and the budgets. The units are usually undertaken through the WA Local Government Association and at the town's cost, and they can be completed either in person or online. Induction and ongoing professional development for the newly elected councillors. An induction program and manuals provided to the new council within 2 months of the election, and that topic includes integrated planning and reporting and key strategic documents. So what the council's looking at over the next sort of 4 to 10 years, particularly in their long-term financial planning components. The planning and development functions of council, the legislation, the acts and the regulations. The council's professional development policy is reviewed within 3 months of the election to establish the ongoing framework for professional development, and that's determined by council. There's costs for attendance at conferences, seminars and training, and they're provided for in the annual budget process of council. To give you an idea of the budget that the council would be managing, the total revenue was in the 25-26 budget is $122 million. And up there you can actually see where our revenue sources are actually coming from. So rates represent $88 million. And then you've got grants, fees and charges, interest and other revenue. And then you see the employee costs and the expenses, employee costs, materials and contracts, depreciation, finance costs, insurances, and other expenditure, leaving at this stage an anticipated $110 million worth of expenditure and $11 million surplus. That surplus process can be picked up during the year or during the mid-year review or allocated off to other forms of renewal or asset management. The ranges of allowances. So how is a councillor reimbursed by the council? And these are prescribed in the legislation, and the council makes the determination in relation to what those figures are. So we're a band 1 local government. There are 4 bandings of local governments in Western Australia. Your smaller wheatbelt councils will be band 4. Your cities or your larger local governments are considered to be band 1. That's determined by the tribunal. So for an elected council member, the minimum component there is 27,560, maximum 35,480. Elected member, mayor or president, minimum 27,560 and $53,215. For a mayor or president in a band 1 local government, the minimum payment is $57,404 and the maximum payment is $100,514. I think they're quite clear. There's also a policy which we've identified up there that talks about allowances, facilities and other expenses that can be reimbursed by council. The role of the Chief Executive Officer. So effectively council employs one person, and that is the Chief Executive Officer. And that person's role is to advise council on the local government's functions, provide information to support the informed council decisions, implement council decisions, manage the daily local government operations, and they liaise with the mayor on organisational matters, represent the local government with the mayor's agreement, and manages all employee-related functions, maintains proper records and documents, and performs any other additional functions required by law or by delegation. And to run the council, Port Hedland has a number of directorates. You've got the CEO's area, which is the Office of the CEO, which includes public affairs as well as human resources. Then there's a Corporate Services Directorate, which is all our finance, governance, our digital services, our ERP project, which is our software program components, our customer services, and then we've got community services, which is recreation, leisure, we've got the cultural and arts, and we've got youth and community development. Our infrastructure directorate is for infrastructure, projects and assets, infrastructure operations, and our waste and other services. Of course, that's mainly where all of our roads and other building constructions are coming from. Regulatory services controls the environmental, the planning, and also the economic development components of the council within those directorates. And all of those senior officers report up to the Chief Executive Officer and then through to council. There are standards of behaviour as a councillor, and they're identified under codes. And the first component there is personal integrity, and that's to act with reasonable care, diligence, honesty and integrity, act lawfully, identify and manage conflicts of interest, avoid damaging the reputation of the local government, ensure social media use and communication complies with the code, only publish information that's factually correct. Then the provisions in relation to others, treat others with respect, courtesy and fairness, respect and value community diversification. And there's a code of conduct for council members, committee members and candidates, and the complaints may be lodged about a candidate's behaviour during elections. And the full code of the town is on the website under the policies provision. And as candidates, you need to be conscious of that, because you need to be conscious that you're subject to that code. The code of conduct and the model code, there are what we used to call minor breaches, and with some of the reforms that have come through in local government, and they're now called conduct breaches, and they're managed by the local government inspector, and that inspector was appointed by the state late last year, and that gentleman's name is Mr. Tony Brown. And securing personal advantage, and those examples include securing personal advantage or causing detriment to any person, improper use of local government property, improper dealings with local government employees. Penalties include withholding fees and allowances and suspension as a councillor for up to 3 months. Then we have serious breaches, and they're managed by the department and the inspector. And that might be failure to declare interest, failure to submit an annual return, failure to declare a gift, failure to vote. And the penalties for there are quite significant in relation to suspension for up to 6 months or disqualification for up to 5 years. The governance requirements, policy, primary and annual returns, and disclosure of information required under the Local Government Act. It's one of the important things that candidates need to be. As a councillor, you have requirements to actually provide a lot of your personal detail that goes into the council's records, interests that you may have, and they're actually then made available on the website for people to actually see and view. And the primary annual returns, the disclosure of financial information as that is required, and also related party disclosures, financial disclosures under the accounting standards. We have what we call financial, indirect financial, proximity and impartiality. Just to explain those, a direct one is where it directly affects the financial interest, either as a positive or as a negative. And or a closely associated person, so somebody that you might be working with, might be some sort of partnership or something along those lines. They're called a direct, indirect financial interest, and they stand to gain either or lose financially from those decisions. The proximity interest that you would have to declare is where a property is owned by the councillor or a closely associated person is near a proposed development affecting the impartiality. In the training, you're given very specific training as to how you determine what those proximity interests are. There's also impartiality interests arise from personal relationships, associations, members of clubs or groups that could be reasonably perceived to affect impartiality, but it doesn't have quite the same penalty provisions as those financial and proximity provisions. With that, I'll hand over to Andrew to talk about, as the returning officer, to talk about the local government extraordinary election processes. But again, if anyone wants to ask any questions, please do, or afterwards I'll wrap up, and if there's any other questions that want to come from the floor, we can do that. Andrew, over to you.
Thank you, Good morning, everyone. Began a little while ago. Good evening, and thank you for showing interest in the local government elections. It's a very, very important part of our democracy. And my role in that is to ensure a very boring election. Well, I'm being discouraged from using the word boring. That's effectively what we're going to get.
Andrew, just don't go to this podium so people online can see.
I can drive the. Can I drive the lectern? Excellent. Okay. All right. Thank you. It's wonderful to have you in person, and for those online, welcome. May I just ask how many people here have either nominated or considered nominating or been involved in local government previously? Okay. Have you been involved since some of those things came in that Ken discussed, or are they new? No? Okay. All right. So I apologise if I go over information that you may already know, but I do have to speak to people who are expressing new interest in local government. So what is a returning officer? Every election is broken into districts in a state sense, and in local governments, every local government is a district, and one person is appointed to oversee the election in that district, and it is a person named as a returning officer. I'm responsible for making sure that the election is conducted according to the legislation, both the Local Government Act and the Electoral Acts, and I'm the first point of contact that you may have any questions or comments about the election. I'm not the only person, however, who runs the election. I have a Deputy Returning Officer, David, who has extensive experience running elections across the state, and I have the governance team and various members of the administration here who have responsibilities under certain areas of advertising, conduct, behaviour and things like that. But please do contact me with any questions or comments and I'll be sure to help you out. Just as you may have done some pre-reading, you may have spoken to other people about this prior to coming today. There are some minimum standards for being eligible to nominate for council, mayor or president. And just to go back to Ken's slides earlier, we are looking for 8 councillors and 1 mayor in this election. So in order to be eligible, you must be 18 years of age or older, be an elector of this district, and that must be at the time that the rolls closed, which was at the end of January. You must not be a member of state or federal parliament. Given the reading that Ken outlined, I don't think you could do both jobs at once. That would be quite mad. You must not be subject to bankruptcy, or you must not have your finances being managed under insolvency laws. You must not be serving a prison sentence for a crime, and referring again to those slides that Ken showed, you had the sort of minor infringements and you had the serious infringements. You cannot be convicted of a serious local government offence within the last 5 years. There are more points of eligibility, and this is part of my role, is to make sure that everyone who stands for election has been vetted or considered against these criteria. So, no offence with imprisonment of more than 5 years. You can't bat for both teams. You've got to be a member of one council or another. So you can't be a member of another council and nominate for a council here. If you want to be a member of the Town of Port Hedland's council, you need to resign your other position, and that has to take effect before you nominate here. You can't be subject to a court order disqualifying you from being a council member because you've misapplied local government funds or properties. You may not be on the electoral roll as the nominee of a body corporate unless you would also be eligible for enrolment on other grounds. So that means that essentially you can represent yourself as a person when you nominate, but you cannot represent an organisation or a group. You can only nominate on your own grounds. And you must not currently be disqualified by the State Administrative Tribunal from holding office. One thing that has come in, which I think has been in for about since 2019, is you have to complete an mandatory online induction. And that is really to deal with the fact that local government members have a lot of responsibilities and a lot of work to do, and it's much better that you're informed ahead of time. So when you're considering making a nomination request with me, please make sure that you've allowed time, half an hour or an hour, to go through that induction and have thought about that as you sort of consider your nomination with me, coming forward and lodging a nomination. Must be enrolled as an elector of the district at the close of enrolments, which was in January, or have made a successful claim to be eligible with the local government. I'm not familiar with that process. If anyone's interested, I can look up the details or refer to Ken as to how you might lodge an eligibility claim. Okay, so successful nomination consists of 5 components. We have a form called an LG 008. That's a form whereby if you are nominating yourself, you complete the form. There is one other avenue for nomination, and that is somebody else nominates you for council and lodges a nomination on your behalf. That can't be done online. That has to be done on paper. You still have some work to do because you still have to complete candidate profile and other details on that nomination. If you'd like to know more about that, please come and see me. So completed form, complete your candidate profile. You've all read candidate profiles. You know that some are more interesting and more informative than others. It's worth taking time, not rushing your nomination. I'm going to be here right through till 4 p.m. next Thursday taking nominations. Please come and see me before the end of Wednesday, ideally. Take your time to write up and get someone to proofread a candidate profile for you. cash deposit, $100 cash deposit, is due to the government, due to the local council, and you can pay that downstairs, and I can send details of other payment methods after this session. But I have to have evidence of that before I can accept your nomination. The written statement is optional, and because we live in the age of computers, it's 2,000 characters, not 2,000 words. So spaces matter. The length of your words doesn't matter so much, but 2,000 words describing in more detail what it is you intend to do as a councillor or why you're running for council. Your nomination and your candidature is only standing once I have accepted that. And that usually occurs at the end of a meeting where we sit down, we run through all the paperwork, I process it and hit the button to say accepted. At that point, you become a candidate and not prior to that. You're a nominee until that time. Okay, so there's an online tool to help you make sure that you've got all the components that you need. It's a nomination builder. Can I just ask, has anyone already discovered this in their investigations until now? Okay. I do know that in the instance that you cannot access this online, I can provide you a hard copy of the nomination form, along with completing that form. If you provide me with a 2,000 character or 1,000 character candidate profile, I can manually enter that for you. Much better if you do it yourself. You'll do it in your own words and you won't be subject to my own typos. Just saying. I know. I have a responsibility to diligently enter that. Please do make use of the online. If you have trouble with that, please email me and we'll make arrangements. You can prepare the nomination form profile and upload the photograph online. Now, with the photos, it's much better, sorry for you online, but if you have a white background, such as this, it allows people to better distinguish. People might be visually impaired, not have good colour vision, so if you've got a clear background, a nice clear background, that helps them to see who you are. Bear in mind that photos do appear in black and white, so choose colour palettes appropriately. I'm colourblind, so don't ask me for advice on that. All right, provide nomination ID at returning officer interview. So when you've completed the online nomination builder, you'll receive a nomination ID, and you need to provide that to me, ideally ahead of time, so that I've got a chance to preview it before our meeting, and then our meeting in time will be more efficient as a result. Okay, candidate profile set out with postal voting packages and posted in local government in the council website. So you'll receive a A5 multifold paper in the postal vote packages. This is where your profile appears. Passport size recent photograph as we discussed, but just the head or your head and shoulders. Try to avoid having too much clear air above your head. I can crop that for you if you happen to need it at the time of nomination. Your candidate profile, it's really important that you state information about yourself and your policies or beliefs. I'm not going to view very favourably things that talk derogatively, talk negatively of other matters. If you feel that something is not going well with the current town and you're standing to make change, talk about the change you want to make. I want to see the council make this better. Don't talk about your thoughts and feelings about why it's terrible now. That starts to get into, and definitely don't mention other people. Okay. Cannot contain information the RO considers to be false, misleading or defamatory. Just my remarks just then. Don't mention other people and you're going to avoid defamatory. Talk positively and we're going to get away from misleading or false. Okay, the 2,000 character additional information is optional, but it must be written in English, should accompany the candidate's nomination paper. So it needs to come to me in the same meeting where I accept your nomination or review your nomination. Again, must observe that it must be truthful, it must not mislead anyone, and it must not defame anyone. Again, this is something that you can use the online nomination builder for. Note that this does not get printed and distributed. This will appear on the council website, but the process of creating one is very useful for you to then use later in your campaigning material. Because if you use something that has been run through and posted on the website and you quote that and use that accurately, your advertising is going to be much less susceptible to any complaints. Electoral rolls. So in the interest of democracy, candidates or nominees who become candidates receive electronic copies of the electoral rolls to enable you to better understand who it is in the community that you're campaigning to and whereabouts they're located. And so when you go door knocking, you can actually be prepared to know who they are. But with that privilege becomes a responsibility, and you will be required to disclose and sign a disclaimer that you will destroy those rolls after the election should you be unsuccessful. If you are successful, you are allowed to retain the rolls for your conduct as a councillor. There are offences for misuse of the roll. So don't go starting an advertising business based on this. It must strictly be for campaigning and door knocking and sharing your policy message. Okay, I'm in town freshly this afternoon. Thanks for putting on the good weather. And I'll be here until Thursday next week. 4 p.m. nominations close. Thereafter, we will draw for positions on the ballot paper. So the steps described, taken to destroy it. Okay, so when we meet, I'll run through the form which describes how you receive it and how you can demonstrate that you've destroyed the rolls. The seriousness of a breach is demonstrated by the fact that it can be a fine of $5,000 and a daily penalty of $50 for each day or part thereof in which you fail to provide proof of destruction. You'll receive 2 rolls, access to 2. One is the eligible voters and one is the owner-occupiers roll. The owner-occupiers roll will be available later in the nomination period. I'll supply that as soon as it becomes available. The electors roll has been completed following close of enrolment at the end of January. People might be interested in what postal voting is. So postal voting is a process by which the ballot papers are received by you at at the address listed on your electoral enrolment. They can be completed in the privacy of your own home and returned by the postal service to the Electoral Commission. In this instance, we expect that following the close of nominations next week, proofing of the ballot paper and then printing, that we'll have them in the mail by the 24th of February, and Australia Post will get them to the town of Port Hedland thereafter. Return packages can be posted, as I've just mentioned, and they can also be hand-delivered back to the Civic Centre here, and we'll have a place to receive them in the library in South Hedland. So we want to make sure that people across the district have a fair opportunity to get their ballot papers back. When they come back, they go into a ballot box. That ballot box is securely stored until the day of the election, at which point ballot papers are processed, ready for a count to commence at 6 p.m. on that night. Those that go back in the post go to a processing centre in the Electoral Commission head office in Perth. We'll update our website to tell you how many have been received as we receive them in the city. And you can follow that on the Commission's website. I've read the history of elections here in Port Hedland. It seems that whilst many elections have a 50% return rate within the first 5 days, from memory, the last 2 elections have seen that observed in the first instance, but we had a lower turnout in the next election for the first 5 days and a later surge in voting. So 50%, it's what we've seen as an average, but don't take it as it's not a law or a rule. It just means that getting your campaigning in early is likely to be more effective because those who are keen to vote will vote early sometimes. Just going back over the same information we've just discussed, reply paid envelope. So when you receive a voting package, it consists of the ballot paper, which is attached to the candidate information multifold, and it also includes a reply paid envelope with a elector's certificate on the outside, an elector's certificate that you need to sign. They all go inside and get posted back to the Commission. Okay, as candidates, should you choose to stand, it's really important that you observe the independence and the right to privacy in a voting process. So you cannot assist an elector to mark their ballot paper. You or a representative cannot offer to take the ballot paper to a postal voting centre. You must not take carriage of a ballot paper, completed ballot paper, at any point. The local government staff will be trained and able to issue replacement voting packages to members of the community who, for one reason or another, have lost, misplaced, or it's been damaged. That process involves removing the issued voting paper for that person and reissuing another one in its place, so that we only ever receive one vote from one person. On election day, we will have South Hedland Library open from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. And the Civic Centre will serve as the main polling place, open from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m, which is a statutory requirement. In this instance, people who have filled in their papers but perhaps haven't got them in the mail, they can come in and drop them in. People who have decided on the day that they're going to vote but haven't got their papers handy, they can come and get replacement packages, and we can issue those and they can vote in the same breath. We'll close here at 6 p.m, and the count will commence as soon after 6 p.m. as possible. Anyone seen or observed a vote count before? Yep, okay. So it's a very quiet affair in which we take ballot papers out of the ballot box, put them into, ensure that they're valid votes, ensure that there's no double votes, etc. And then once we've got a pile of ballot papers, we begin bundling them and then counting them. Scrutineers nominated by you as a candidate may observe the vote. They may not interfere with the vote staff, but they are able to wander around the count and just see and perform a vital function of transparency, making sure that the votes are being properly handled, and they can ask the returning officer or deputy returning officer if they've got any questions during the night. But the scrutineers perform a really important role in elections. Returning officer may declare the results of the election on a day after election day. So by the end of the night, depending on how many votes we get, we'll count until about 10 p.m. If we're within cooee of getting to a result, we might continue until 11. Otherwise, we will resume the following day at 10 a.m. Until we get a result. Results will be posted on the Commission's website. Ken will be notified as the CEO, and they will no doubt be published on the Council's website as well. What happens afterwards? Refund of deposits. So candidates who are successfully elected, any candidate who withdraws before the close of nominations, the deposit will be refunded. That may still wait until, I think refunds will only happen after the election process is completed. Any non-elected candidates who receive at least 5% of the total number of first preference votes included in the count. So it's worth $100 to you to get out and get a few hundred people to vote for you. You get your $100 back. Now, this is authorisation of election material is something that can be reasonably contentious, but it doesn't take a lot to comply. One thing that we've noticed, or I've noticed, is that people increasingly feel that facebook.com/candidate name is suitable authorisation. It's not recognised under the legislation at this time. You still must follow a name and address of the person authorising the poster. That may be someone campaigning on behalf of a candidate, and it needs to be the name and address of the person who printed the poster. The address must not be a PO box, but it can be a business address. So if people have security or privacy concerns for whatever reason, plenty of people have plenty of reasons, I suppose, it just needs to be a physical address where it is reasonable that if someone were to attend that address, they could speak to the person listed on the advertising as the authoriser. All online election material requires the name and address of the person authorising the material. Scrutineers, there is some paperwork to fill in I'll talk to you a bit about that should you become a candidate. Disclosure of electoral gifts, refer back to Ken's slide. Note that the period by which you are bound by the disclosure actually commenced in September, 6 months prior to the election. So if you have been doing any campaigning or somebody has made a donation to you in the expectation that you'll be campaigning, you need to have kept good records because you will be subject to the disclosure requirements. Disclosure, acceptance, candidates know the name and address of each donor before accepting a gift. Disclosure of obligations, gifts received, up to $10,000 fine for non-compliance. Money and politics is a grubby affair, so you need to keep it as well recorded and documented as possible. Ken is, well, the CEO of a local government is the person responsible for enforcing these regulations. The election will take place on Saturday, the 28th of March. Thank you very much for listening. Any questions? Any questions online? Nope. Wonderful. The floor is yours. Thanks, Commissioner.
Thanks, Andrew. No, I don't need that.
Andrew, what happened to Port Edmonton as a mayor? What happened to the president? So I noticed there's a sign out on it.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
It says president. Does it now?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
That's
That needs to be changed.
That's a signwriting issue.
From memory, I think it was 1991, the town went from shire to a town. And as a town or a city, they have a mayor instead of a shire.
Yeah, right. It's still not over the fragment. Yeah.
Thank you for your question. Thanks for the answer.
Good pickup. Well, thanks very much, Andrew, and welcome along all our prospective candidates, I hope, and those online as well. I'm Ron Urovich, Commissioner of Port Hedland currently, and my past experience has been 1 year as a councillor, 3 years as the Deputy Mayor, and close to 20 years as the Mayor of Kalgoorlie-Boulder. It's been an interesting time. I've seen a lot of things come and go over the period of time, but it's been worthwhile. So all that stuff you've just seen, it's very important, but don't be discouraged because it's well worth the effort if you take your time or you decide to nominate for election. You might find myself concentrating on the mayoral position a bit at the moment because in my view, that's an integral part of any council. As they say, the fish rots from the head. Now, you've got to have a mayor, so if you're thinking of being a candidate, you've got to have a mayor that is open and accountable to the council. Most important, they've got to be able to communicate effectively with the elected members, and as Ken pointed out on the Act, the mayor is the link between the elected members and the administration. The big thing you've got to remember is you cannot be everything to everyone, and you cannot be everywhere for everyone. You'll soon burn out very, very quickly if you try to take that on, and it's not healthy. You've got to be accessible, and most important, both as an elected member and more importantly as a mayor, or in some cases a deputy mayor, when the mayor is not available. But from my notes over the years, I'll just give you a couple of points. Obviously, Ken mentioned the Act about the mayor must run the meetings and keep with the procedures and ensure that everyone has a free, or not a free go, but an equal opportunity to say their piece around the table. You have standing orders which regulate how and when people go to speak and move motions and all that sort of stuff you'll learn about. But the person at the top that's controlling that meeting is important because everyone has a right to move a motion, speak to it, and then have a word to close a motion after everyone else has had a matter to speak to. One thing you'll find in local government, you might really, really, really not like the idea of whatever it is, painting the posts red or whatever it is. And I've been in that situation where I've disagreed, not strongly, but I've had my say as the mayor, as you have, and the mayor usually has a say just before the right of reply. And I've spoken against issues in the past and lost. But then the very next day, because of the regulations, I get into the media and say what a wonderful decision the council made last night. That's my job, or that was my job as the mayor, and that'll be your job as a mayor if you are successful. You will have difference of opinions around the table, you can guarantee that, but you must be respectful of each other. If you don't have respect of each other, no matter how bad you think the person's idea is or whatever, then you're on a spiral down. The mayor has control of the meetings, but it's imperative they're respectful for everyone's wishes or everyone's views around the table. Also, the mayor represents the council within the community. Most important, sometimes the deputy mayor will, sometimes the CEO will represent the council on delegation by the mayor. It's important you have that time to go off to, you know, the PIC meeting or whatever, the Turtles, all those things that are required from time to time. One thing I did successfully is that I identified early in the pieces of after each election was specific councils have specific interests in particular items. And then I went out of my way to delegate to them attendance at a particular meeting or whatever, representing council, or on occasions to speak on those sort of things that they have got a love for. As the mayor, you don't know everything, you won't know everything, and you can't be an expert at everything. But you'll have people around the table that are very, very good at whatever, different things. And you've got to respect that. So, I don't want to rub it on too long, but it's extremely important that part of the publicity of council is obvious, or most of it is through the media, a lot of it is through online now. But as the mayor, you are required to talk with the media. Just to give you a couple of pointers, don't play favourites. Don't support the paper and give them all that information early or whatever and not the radio. That goes against you. I must say that you've got very, very, very good media in Port Hedland. I've been through the wars with media. I remember one very, very good situation just after I was elected. And I opened up the Kalgoorlie Miner one morning, it says, Mayor under investigation, front page. And I thought, holy shit, what's this? So anyway, I found out, rang the department, and the department said, oh, we can't tell you that. In those days, they couldn't tell you if you're under investigation. Anyway, through my means, I found out that a person from the paper lodged a complaint with the department, and then another person rang the department and asked if Mayor Jurovich was under investigation. And they said yes. Cunning. However, after that event, an editor and a reporter were moved on. You're not a punching bag. As the mayor or as an elected member, you must remember that. You've got to be able to accept criticism, particularly as a mayor, because, as I say, you might be defending a situation or decision of council that you didn't agree with, and you always get people that don't agree with it as well. It doesn't matter. You're not going to get everyone agreeing with every decision council makes, trust me. But it's important that you take their view on, smile, and get back to them with relevant information, because a lot of the times they have misinformation, and that's why they go and crook about something or another. So it's extremely important that when you're dealing with the public and with the media, you treat them with respect again, give them the information you can give them, and not lead anyone on. Okay. One big important point to go on is that you've been elected to a high office as a councillor or a mayor, and it's up to you on how the town, in this case, will be viewed throughout the state. I've said this many times before, Port Hedland is the most dynamic local government area that I've come across in my career. There's such opportunities here for local government, elected members and staff, obviously, that you could really be on the map. So the challenge is there. You've seen the budget, $120 odd million, $11 million surplus. No councils have that. They're all in the red, wherever I came from. Just touching on building a team. Again, I'm harping on it, but it's crucial that the Mayor must build a team. And that includes the elected members, or that is the elected members, and the CEO. The CEO is, you employ the CEO as the Mayor, and the CEO employs everyone else. One thing I've always gone on and dealt with accordingly is I've never been drinking mates with a CEO over the years. Because at times, as the Mayor, you might have to sit at the desk and have some words about whatever is the issue of the day. If you're drinking mates, that's a bit hard to do. You have a very good friendly relationship with the Mayor or with the CEO, but that should be where it is. As I said, don't play favourites. One thing I did a lot of was CC in all elected members in issues that were issues of the day. So anyone walking up Hannon Street, stopped one of my councillors and said, what's this thing about, whatever. And they would have information. Again, critical information. Okay, as the Mayor, you will, on top of those meetings there, you will be required to sit down with the Mayor. I used to, with the CEO, I used to go in every day, might be for 5 minutes, might be 3 minutes, but that's because I'm self-employed, I could do that. And the CEO will fit in with whoever is elected to have the briefing sessions every now and again. And we would just talk about whatever's going at the time. Extremely important. And just as a side there, one thing that I did very well, I don't mind saying so myself, is early in the piece, because the complaints with the elected members and mayors weren't accessible, I started up a mayoral office in the Boulder Town Hall, as it was at the time, where in those days you had to sign about 500 cheques a month. You didn't have electronic payments. So I used to go out there, put a little flag out the front of the Boulder Town Hall, it says Mayor in Residence, and I'd just sit in the office and sign cheques. Sometimes I'd have 2 or 3 people, sometimes I'd have a waiting line. People could just drop in. And then we got other elected members who had the opportunity, had the time to do that as well. And that proved very, very well. Okay, so really, I could rabbit on for ages, but I won't. But I will just close in just saying, I hope you do seriously consider nominating as a candidate for this upcoming election, both either as a mayor or a councillor or both of them. Because you're going to enjoy your role if you're successful, but you have to have a commitment. In my parting words to my send-off as mayor some years ago, I quoted these words. I said, I leave council as a wiser person than I entered it. I leave the city a better place to live, work and play. And I leave council knowing that I've made a positive contribution. If you can do that, you've done your job. Thank you. Questions? No questions? This is easy. Yeah. I might add, I've left a pile of business cards at the front there. Please take one, ring me anytime or email me any time of the day or night. I'm here available. Yes?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Like a Dorothy Dixon. Promise I haven't spoken to Ron beforehand. Ron, how's the change been, I guess, in your time with, I guess, the impact of social media and the role of the council?
Yeah, social media. If I had my way, I'd blow it up. Yeah, the old keyboard warriors, they can be very, very nasty, as you no doubt know. But the positive thing is you can spend bugger all money in getting out there to a lot of people to put your candidate profile or your 2,000 letters, words out there, to give your profile out there. You're going to get knockers, accept them. That's it. Accept it, move on. You might even get some vicious little buggers at time, but ignore them. They only are fueled on what the reaction you give them. So, yeah, as I said, I'd blow it up if I could. Any other questions? Or any questions? No? Okay. Hand it over to Ken.
Thank you, everybody. Just in closing, if I could, there's no other questions. I believe there was 22 people, I think it was, that we actually had online while watching the stream, which I think is a really great result. Commissioner, can I thank you for your presentation? Andrew, thank you. David, thank you very much. And there is some nibblies available if people want to mingle and ask any questions they want to ask in an open forum, please do. Everybody online, thank you very much. And I'll declare the evening concluded. Thank you.